What's up, legends, and welcome back to another Unmatched First Impressions video. Yes, let's just get this out of the way. I committed to the bit for this video, and I don't have any regrets. Uh, so once again, I am giving my thoughts on a new character in the Unmatched Marvel Brains and Brawn set, which is available for order right now from Restoration Games. It'll be the top link in the description if you are interested in picking up a set for yourself. This is a first impressions video, so I'm giving you my first thoughts on the new SheHulk character for Unmatched. Hulks are green. Get it? Okay. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. No regrets at all. Starting off with the mini, you can see that she is absolutely ripped and chucking big piece of material at someone, which fits with her ability. Just throw something. But also, one thing I noticed my first time playing was that on the map Kamertage, there's like a broken column on the ground, and I guess thematically SheHulk just ripped it out and is about to chuck it at poor old Steven. So I love this mini. It's big in real life. It's not like Bigfoot level, but it's there, and it really adds to the hulkiness of the whole thing. SheHulk. She's a melee fighter. Makes sense. With 20 health, that is one beefy bungus. That is a lot of health to work through, and she actually has healing on top of that. So, makes sense. Hulks are tanks. Move 2, because a 20 health move 3 fighter would be pretty nuts. Green, gorgeous, gamma-powered bombshell. I know that's what you're thinking. That's what you're thinking about me right now. I am at least one of those things. Yes, her ability is just throw something. At the start of your turn, you may discard a card to deal damage equal to its boost value to a fighter in your zone. So this is the same idea as Medusa, except instead of just like a free ping that Medusa gets, SheHulk discards a card, but can then deal damage equal to the boost value on that card, which in her deck would either be 1, 2, or 3. And like not even spending an action to just deal 2 damage to you. It's like a free Reign of Terror, except, or I guess it's more like Momentary Glance. It kind of just like converts cards into damage, which is both good and bad, because a lot of times, but not necessarily, there is a correlation between card strength and boost value. And in your deck, it's kind of along that lines, where some of your good cards have a higher boost value than some of your bad cards. And the damage of like a, if you're just discarding a boost value of one card for damage is not really a great ratio unless you like just need a little bit more ping to close out the game. 3 damage for one card, on the other hand, is excellent, except in the case of the 3 value boost card that you have, you might actually be able to get more damage out of it just playing it. So it all comes down to the game state, and of course, having opponents start in your zone favors you being a little bit more defensive, because then if they have to aggress, if they have the initiative, they have to come at you, and then they're putting themselves in the position where you can use your ability. Which begs the question, do opponents have to approach you? If you have a bunch of big scary attacks and you can deal damage with your ability, should opponents just run away from you because you are move 2? You definitely don't want to spend your move or your boost 3 cards boosting in when you could instead be playing them or throwing them for damage. So a lot of times your move value is going to be like 4, capped at 4 artificially by your own need or desire to get value out of cards. And if opponents can just outplay you by being 5 spaces away from you and not in your zone, you might have some issues. But I don't think it'll be spike level, just because you have some ways to catch people, especially on the smaller maps. And when you do catch them, look out. Love the card back. Just basically 3 colors, green, purple, and white, and then some shadows in there. You can't really tell from the video, but I am wearing purple. The purple right below it doesn't make it look as purple. And there's also blue in the background, so I guess it all just kind of blends together. But my face is green, if you hadn't realized that already. Let's take a look at some of She-Hulk's cards. The first of which is the Savage She-Hulk. It's a 3-value attack. Boost value of 3 and 2 copies. And it says during combat, you may spend an additional action to make this card's value 9 instead. Holy cow. So a 9. Let's think about how some other characters count to 9. Arthur uses Excalibur and a Noble Sack. That's how he gets to 9. Dracula uses Beast Form and 3 cards to get to 9. Jekyll uses Forever Hide and 2 cards to get to 9. And Houdini, doing his big reveal, spends the big reveal and 2 other cards to get to 9. Whereas She-Hulk, it's all contained in 1 card. There are some downsides. Of course, there are. The first of which is faint. The second of which is the effect requires an additional action for you to spend. You don't really have ways to maneuver, gain an action somehow, and then attack with 2 actions left. So really, there's one of 2 ways you're going to trigger it. The first one's like over here. The second one is by starting your turn adjacent to an opponent. But if your opponent doesn't want to get something thrown at them and doesn't want to get savaged, they just won't. If they don't have a feint in their hand, they're not going to end next to you and put you in that position. So while this card is incredible and has a bunch of potential, how often you're going to see it actually be a 9 is up in the air. Against decks without feints, though, it'll be a lot easier, especially with the help of the other card we're going to talk about. But I would not hold my breath on triggering this during a game. I think probably more often than not, if you get the chance to just throw this, might be a good idea. Because you just might not be able to get the 9 to trigger. The next card is Omega Level Threat. It is a printed 5. It says after combat, if you dealt 2 or more combat damage, your opponent discards 2 random cards. Whew, a lot to unpack there. Printed 5, excellent. Printed 5 with text, excellent. Random discards, excellent. 2 random discards, out of this world. The only thing that's like slowing this race car back from going a million miles an hour is the fact that you have to deal at least 2 damage, which is good because that makes the card balanced. If this was an if you won the combat, your opponent discards 2 random cards, game over. But because you have to deal 2 damage, it means that your opponent can safely value block with a 4 and be all right. This card is nasty though. Both of these attacks are insane, and your opponent is going to do everything and anything they can to prevent you from triggering them. Although it does put an interesting mind game on a first action She-Hulk attack, because if they feint it and it's a 5, they're still taking 3 damage. But if they play a 4 into the Omega level threat that they think is coming, they could end up taking 5 from Savage She-Hulk. So there is an interesting mind game there, and I like that this is kind of a feint bait, even though you actually want the effect. But against certain characters who value block for 3 more often than not, or can't get higher than that, this card is always going to trigger, and it will make some characters cry. Ooh, Robin. Someone say something? The next attack is Sensational! I have to turn around, but the back of my neck doesn't have green on it, so it wouldn't work, and my hair isn't that long. It's a 4-value She-Hulk attack with 3 copies, and it says after combat, if you won the combat, you may choose a card from your discard pile and shuffle it into your deck. So this is recursion. It's conditional recursion, and it's kind of like Still Standing from Luke Cage's deck, although that recurs 2 cards. This only recurs 1, which I think is fine generally because you just need to play like 4 copies of this, and most decks won't be able to cancel all of them. Will you be in the position to play all 4 of them? Probably not. So just recurring Omega level threat back is a 5 with discards. That's probably good enough. You have 3 of these. You're probably going to be able to win combat with at least like 2 of them. And you can always just loop Sensationals to kind of not really go infinite, but I don't really see the value in that for this deck. It's kind of like Battle Hardened loops for Achilles, except you can block with Battle Hardened as well, so it has a little bit more use. And this also shuffles into your deck, so you can't just like immediately play it again. So in that case, I think it's probably fine to just recur 3 other cards that aren't sensational and kind of like end the loop. But like if you're throwing out 5 5s with random discards for the whole game, like that is a lot for most decks to handle. The first black card is Lady Justice. We talked about this in the other video, as did we with these other 2 cards. So I'm like kind of gonna go a little bit faster over this card. But it is a 0 value block, 3 copies. It says during combat, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Increase the value of this card by twice that card's boost value. This is great. Obviously, it sucks to offensive cancels, but if your opponent is canceling this, they're not canceling any of these, which of course, this is all assuming that your opponent actually like engages you and wants to play the game. I'm not sure what'll happen if they give you the spike treatment, but you do have a lot of health and fatigue, so hopefully, we'll talk about kind of how your game will go at the end of the cards. But during combat, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Great. Discarding cards from your opponent is amazing. This isn't a choice discard, but it is random in the sense that it's the top card of their deck. I think discarding from hand can sometimes be a little bit better randomly, just because it could be holding on to good cards the whole game, but what are the odds that they just haven't drawn it yet and it's at the top of their deck waiting to get discarded? So really nice that you can steal 3 of them, but potentially even more. And increasing the value of this card by twice that card's boost value. So I'd say on average, the boost values of cards in this game are 2. So this is like most likely a 4 in most cases, sometimes more, which anything above 4, I think you're just happy with. 4 is probably like what you want, at least, because if you discard a 1, you're only blocking for 2. That can kind of hurt you, although you do just have a butt ton of health. And against Sinbad, who has cards without boost values. Yikes. The next card is The Defense Rests, a 2-value block card that we've seen before, actually. After combat, draw cards equal to the amount of combat damage you took. This is, I think, like a carbon copy of the Jekyll version, I think, for Science. And the Genie has one, but it's a 1 value, and it's... I'm going to be honest, I don't actually know what the Genie card is called. But you trade health for cards, and I think the idea behind that is that you can sustain throwing multiple things, throwing multiple things in general. Like, I want to know how viable that strat is as SheHulk to just use your ability every turn. You have a decent amount of card draw in this deck. If you're just able to just keep drawing cards and keep throwing them at your opponent, that might be like an alternate win condition for you, except that idea just has so ridiculously easy amount of counterplay where the opponent just doesn't end in your zone, and then maybe drawing a bunch of cards can kind of backfire since you don't really have an exhaustion game to fall back on. The next card is Green Energy, a 4-value versatile. It says after combat, if you won the combat, deal 1 damage to each fighter adjacent to SheHulk. So this is like wily fighting combined with eaten alive, and that's really good. This is a solid value block that you know it's going to be a 4, and you're not just hoping. And 4 value blocks are more often than not going to win combat, and so just the additional damage is nice. It's really solid as a block card for those reasons, and just the like ping back to adjacent fighters, really good against melee fighters. Not so great against range, but you'll take what you can get. So I would prioritize this on defense versus offense. Next card is Legalese. I believe that's how you say it. It's a 2-value purple. You have 3 copies of it. It says after combat, if you won the combat, your opponent chooses whether you both draw a card or both discard a card. If you lost the combat, you make the choice instead. This is a really interesting card. Cards with choices, always fantastic. Cards that could potentially give your opponent a choice, interesting. And it's kind of like a little bit of a gamble with this card. Although, if you're attacking with this card, given the other stuff your deck can produce, your opponent is probably going to play something that will win combat versus this on defense. So in that case, you get to choose, and you can either make your opponent discard if you have a bigger hand than theirs, or you can make you both draw if they have a bigger hand than yours. I think that's generally how it will go, but it also depends on like what's in your hand. Obviously, if they're at a low hand count and you just have a bunch of stuff to throw at them, you can just discard a junk card, make them potentially discard like one of the last 2 blocks they had, and then just keep hitting them. But yeah, there's a lot of potential with this card, a lot of different game states this could be useful in, and it was really interesting to kind of, when I was practicing, or playing this character, I guess I would not call it practicing, my opponent was trying to figure out when I was attacking with Legalese versus like an actual attack, because they wanted to lose the combat so they could choose. But obviously that's pretty risky, because if you're wrong and you play like a regroup on defense against this, and it's not this, you're going to be sad. So really interesting card there, even though like it doesn't do like that much in the grand scheme of things. This card, however, is crucial to your game plan, I think. It is a 3-value versatile. You have 3 copies of it. It's Nerve Cluster Strike. Like, I don't think I can do that with my hands. Immediately. If SheHulk is adjacent to the opposing fighter may not leave their space this turn. So this is like Terrifying Roar, except you have to be adjacent. So when that melee character comes in and hits you, well, you can Nerve Cluster Strike. Now they can't move, and you've set up a position for you to potentially play Savage SheHulk or a bait or something along that line. Against ranged fighters, I think the strategy for using this card will just be to run up, run at them, and adjacent to them. And if they attack you first action, you do that, and then they're in for a world of hurt. And it kind of forces them into a pattern of they have to move first, or else they're going to get popped. Love that you have 3 copies of this. It makes it much more likely that this card like actually could do something. The next card is Cease and Desist. I bet Justin had a fun time with some of these card names, because he was a lawyer, and he does do the card names. So like this were all probably his ideas. So Cease and Desist is a 1-value versatile, 3 copies, and it says immediately. I'm doing that because I'm the Hulk. Cancel all effects on your opponent's card. During combat, if you are attacking, the value of this card is 4 instead. So this is your feint, or it's your deck's cancel, basically, which on defense, it's a 1-value feint, which isn't great, but you do have enough health to just kind of like soak up the extra point of damage that you would take. Like obviously getting 5 damage from a canceled beast form, unideal, but you'll take it compared to something else that could go wrong. But I love that this incentivizes you to attack because you are a Hulk. And throwing an offensive cancel 4 at someone, kind of like a super feint from Deadpool's deck, can be pretty lethal depending on the opponent's blocks. Of course, against something like Bigfoot, this card is doing nothing on either side. So it could be toss fodder, ability fodder. That's probably a better way to say it in certain matchups. But having a cancel is a distinction that we need to take into account when judging decks these days, especially because Spider-Man doesn't have cancels, and your cancel is a little bit weird, and the deck is kind of yeah, you can use this on defense, but attack with it. And so it'll just be interesting to see the situations where that comes up. The next card, and an equally important card to the strike, is Leap Towards. This is the first scheme you have, 2 copies, and it says move SheHulk up to 4 spaces. She may move through opposing fighters. Then, if she's adjacent to an opposing fighter, gain an action. So first action Leap Towards are going to be great for setting up Savage SheHulks. Moving 4 spaces is a key number because it's kind of like a Travelers of the Night on a Khonshu turn. If you just set up in the middle of the map, you can just use this on your next turn and basically reach everywhere. Map dependent, of course, and your opponent can body block, but they have to be very particular with their positioning. And just as a solo move 2 character, she needs a little bit of mobility, considering that we don't have any other mobility on cards yet, and this is just kind of like removing your opponent's mobility. So this works really well in our kit and is utilized a lot in this deck. The next card is Double Jeopardy. I can't quite break through my sleeves yet, but thanks, Justin. This is also a fun card. Scheme, boost value of 2 copies, draw 2 cards, and recover 2 health. Solid effect. It's without recurring any of these with Sensational. That's 4 health, 4 extra health. So you're kind of at like a 24 health hero, which is insane considering that's more than some characters have with their hero and sidekick combined. But the draw sometimes hurts if you're drawing a lot with your cards. And it kind of takes away the option for you to just recur this a bunch and just recover the health constantly with Sensational, because you will be drawing deeper into your deck with that and running out faster than the clock would normally allow. But just a solid card. What's the last card? The last card, Jennifer Walters Esquire, plays SheHulk in a starting space, again from the Doctor Strange video. Probably want a little bit of clarification on if that means a starting space, a space with a number in a diamond in it, or a space where someone physically started that game in. Another interesting mobility card, although if your opponent knows this exists, they can play around it pretty heavily. Draw a card, gain an action, so it could set up Savage SheHulk, but probably won't because your opponent will just avoid the starting spaces. But some interesting things you can do there. I think, again, I've been saying this about all the characters, but I think this is a character you play aggressively. And I think it's because you just have enough draw power that when you're hit, you can get back up. And your offense is generally better than your opponent's. And if you just deal a bunch of damage at the beginning of the game, you can then fall back on playing more defensively. And just, if your opponent wants to engage you, you just ability damage them every turn. I think just getting to the point where your opponent has to engage you is crucial. And that's why I think getting a nice big hit in at the start is important. But also, I don't know if going first and being aggressive is better than being second and forcing your opponent to come to you with the card difference. But we'll see. In terms of actually looking at the boost values of your cards, Savage SheHulk is the only 3. We have Green Energy, Jennifer Walters Esquire, I think that's what the ESQ means. Leap Toward, Nerve Cluster Strike, and Legalese as the 1s. And then Omega level threat, Sensational, Lady Justice, the Defense Rests, Cease and Desist, and Double Jeopardy as the 2s. My issue was, when I was She-Hulk, I kind of didn't want to throw any of the 2s because they're all good cards. Obviously, the 2 blues and the 2 reds, all fantastic, but I could see a case where you throw Double Jeopardy if you just like don't need the health, and when Cease and Desist, depending on the matchup, you can just throw that for 2 damage easy. Savage She-Hulk, again, when you're thinking about it, if you're gonna be able to actually like get the card effect out, you think, keep it, because you'll probably be able to do more than 3 damage. But otherwise, if you have the chance to chuck it, probably a good idea. And I just don't think it's worth it to throw any of the 1s out. Maybe Jennifer Walters Esquire, because sometimes this card is just like not useful at all. But like Green Energy, great value block. Nerve Cluster Strike, great for setting up Savage She-Hulk. Leap Towards, great for setting up Savage She-Hulk. And Legalese, I just think the card is more fun to play than it is to chuck. So overall, what do I think about She-Hulk? I think she will be as strong as people let her be, which makes me a little sad. I think there's a bunch of potential in this deck. I just think it might be too easy to play around. And while I see her absolutely just dunking on some characters, I think there will just be matchups where she is just like completely helpless and unable to do anything. I know I played a game in playtesting against Darkblade where I was She-Hulk, and that was like one of the most miserable games of my life because I was just like chasing him around and I just like couldn't attack him because like basically your move is 4 because you don't really want to boost with Savage She-Hulk, and on some maps your opponent can just run away and actually exhaust you, which stinks. So I think I'm the most pessimistic about She-Hulk in this set. I think she'll probably be like low mid and maybe like high low. But I think she has the potential to be better than Spider-Man, if that makes sense. So anyways, those are my thoughts on She-Hulk. Please let me know what you think about her in the comments, and kind of like the conundrum of, do you run away or do you not run away, and what do you think the optimal play pattern will be against her, because that I think will determine a lot about how she actually plays, which I don't really like. I like it when you're in a deck where you can be in the driver's seat and kind of change the course of the game. She-Hulk kind of seems like you have to take what the other player will give you kind of character, which in some matchups just doesn't work out. So yeah, this was the last of my Brains and Brawn first impressions videos. If you haven't seen the others for Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, go check them out. If you haven't seen my general overview of the set, go check that out as well. If you're interested in getting a set, there's a link in the description down below. If you love pineapple on pizza, let me know, because it's glorious. And if you don't, keep your dirty mouth shut. So thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go take a shower. As always, like, subscribe, and yeet!